Good morning, folks. We've got the Self Shift crew back for another Saturday morning podcast on actually a pretty rainy Saturday in February. So you've got Patrick here. Doug's with us. Say hello, Doug.
Hey, hello.
And we've also, of course, got Derek. Say hello, Derek.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Good
All
morning.
righty. Yes. All right. So we are all well caffeinated, hopefully, this morning. And we've got a really interesting subject today. And this builds upon items that we've talked about before, but it covers practicing acceptance really from two perspectives. The first is what we resist persists. So we're going to cover that. And what we can accept, we can move beyond. Or perhaps, better said, what you accept transforms. So pretty heavy stuff, but from a self-shift perspective, I know, at least for me personally, it are items that have really helped me in my self-development journey. Because I'm the type of person that quite honestly likes to try to negotiate with my past, argue with my past, all kinds of stuff. And moving beyond that has been super helpful for me. So again, talking firstly about what we resist persists. And I think the concepts of this go back probably thousands of years, but Carl Jung did a great job with some of his quotes, many years ago as it relates to covering these types of things. And I can remember hearing the quotes going back many years, and it just didn't resonate with me until I really went deep on it and tried to figure out what it really meant. What you resist persists, because it seems like what you resist should go away, but that is not the case, right? It's kind of like the guy in ancient Greek or whatever, the myth about I think his name was Sisyphus, that was pushing the boulder up the hill and it would always roll back, right? And that's a good analogy, at least for me in my personal life, of some of the things that I resisted for many years, and until I accepted and moved forward with those or dealt with them, that didn't work for me. So before I get into any personal examples, because I am going to go give you some examples of things that I've had to work through, and this philosophy has really helped me. I want to get Derek or Doug, any initial thoughts before we just jump into this.
Yeah. I guess as I've been on my learning journey and things like that, I realized one day I heard the phrase, what you resist persists. I think it was in a work context. And I realized, oh my gosh, I do that all over the place. And that's really like, it's almost one of my core behaviors. And so it was really interesting to connect it to that concept and then start to look and see the kinds of things I was doing. And what I realized is a lot of my resistance was avoidance, and avoidance of things I thought would introduce stress or be stressful. And I think we're all like kind of out there trying to avoid difficult situations and stressful situations. And I realized, like in my work life and my personal life, I tended to do that avoidance thing all over the place. So, I would, when it came to work assignments or new work asks, I would look at that situation and say, is this going to be a difficult thing to be successful at? Am I going to have to deal with difficult people? Is the environment going to, be difficult, have difficulty in terms of being able to be successful? And a lot of times I would try to pick and choose situations I thought would be less stressful. And as I was on that journey, another sort of learning I had was a book called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. And she has a TED talk out there that I think is viewed by millions of people, but it's about the effect of stress and how the effect of stress is much worse if you view stress as a negative thing that leads to negative outcomes. And so as part of her talk, she was talking about, the origins of stress and all these different kinds of things. But at the end of the day, stress is something that comes from evolution. Patrick, you've talked to me about this in the past, and you were on the lookout for saber-toothed tigers and things like that. And so your body reacts, you start to feel cortisol and other things, and you get excited and those kind of things. And applying that to a specific situation, I used to avoid, giving presentations. And in her talk, or in her book, she talked about, you have to realize actually maybe you're excited to share your knowledge with people. And so, I used to resist the opportunity to do that kind of thing. And it was during the pandemic, I was going to be presenting to the board of directors of the company, and I was really sweating it. I was really stressed, really nervous. And I flipped that mindset to, like, I'm excited to share with them, what I'm bringing forward. And it was, I guess maybe that moves towards that acceptance part. I flipped it towards that. So, anyways, it's just recognizing our behaviors of resisting and avoiding stress and those kinds of things, and kind of reframing your mindset around those things.
Derek?
Yeah, so acceptance and resistance presents you with two opposite energy fields, right? So whatever's happening in your life, the circumstances, the traumas, the woundings, the unfortunate things that happen, whether good or bad, it leaves you with feeling some way, right? And there's you walk down that path, and something happens in your life, and you walking down that path, and you come to that fork in the road, and you have to choose, which way am I going to go here? And most often in the woundings or the hurt, the pain, the suffering, we choose to go the path of resisting what is, resisting that what's happening, or what's happened to you. And you lose money, or you go through a divorce, or you fail at accomplishing a skill, or you fail a test, or you fail in a relationship, and you choose that path of resistance, and you go down that spiral of self-doubt. You blame yourself, you criticize yourself, and that leads you into an energy of, you can be depressed, you can feel anxious, you can feel this just overwhelming upset within yourself. And the flip side of that, going down that path of acceptance will lead you to, freedom. You feel free. You're like, oh, you're okay with what's happening, whether it's painful, whether it's awful, whether it's great, whatever it is, it leads you to a freedom, and there's a journey there. It's a discipline of walking that path to go which direction. And you have to learn through that which way you want to go. And I think that that's the journey that we all are on, and making that shift in our life is there's a learning behind it. So that's what I would say is, we all are faced with it, so it's really about which path you're going to choose.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And to double click, a little bit further, is now that we've kind of framed it up for, what resists, persists, and also acceptance. I'm going to go into an example of this. It manifested itself in my life just over the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that I've learned over time is, um, the more that you try to um, judge the past, or avoid the past, or or even the present, or arguing with the present or the past, doesn't result in anything productive, right? The fact that you've got to accept what is. It doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that should have happened to you or the situation's great, but you do have to accept it, because if you don't accept it, you truly can't move forward. And I'm going to give a concrete example again of what that, quite honestly, I'm a little bit ashamed and embarrassed to admit, but I have over my life struggled with judging others, judging myself, right? And forming judgments that, quite honestly, I had no right to be forming, or that was just not the person that I wanted to be, right? I don't want to be a judgmental person, or whatever the case may be. And I found myself, this happened just over the last couple of weeks, where dealing with a difficult work situation and forming these judgments about folks and situations that that started becoming a real issue. And I finally accepted the fact that, dude, you're judging people here, right? They're coming from what they believe is a position of authenticity and what they think is right. You shouldn't be judging these folks. This is your issue. So you've got to accept this part of your personality, or this whatever part of your habit loop, or whatever the case may be, and start working on that. So I did. I accepted the fact that I've got a problem, right? I shouldn't be judging others or be a judgmental person. So I went, thought about it, actually mapped out a habit loop of how I was judging people and what the triggers were and stuff like that, and trying to break that habit, doing some meditation on it and that type of thing, because if I kept resisting it, I was going to keep judging, right? And if I didn't accept it and align and take action related to that, I was just going to keep judging people, which is not healthy for me. And quite honestly, I have no right to judge anybody. So, just I know that's maybe a weird example, but applying some of these concepts of acceptance and that type of thing, and accepting what is and taking action aligned to your core values, with authenticity and genuine and having compassion, that type of thing, really allowed me to get over this over the last couple of weeks and actually see a point of view from somebody transparently that I had dismissed out of judgment. And so that's really helped me get beyond it. I feel better about myself. The relationship is good, right, at work, and I'm able to move forward. So I know that I have that tendency, but I've accepted it, but I'm working on it and taking action aligned my core values. So again, a little example of something, from my own personal life. And I don't know if you guys have anything recently or whatever that you think is maybe a good indication that, for the viewers or the listeners here, that when you accept things, deal with things, and go through them, right? The only way through, or the only way over is through, right? I think that's another Carl Jung quote as well, but is going through it, right? So what are your thoughts? Any examples from your all side?
Yeah, I can. Perhaps it's not. So going back to the idea of like finally accepting and how it leads to good, kind of frees you up a little bit to experience things you probably wouldn't have experienced. I would say for my early adult life, and once we had some young kids, I had sort of an irrational fear of, it wasn't all encompassing, but an irrational fear of travel to a certain extent, where I didn't really seek to travel. I didn't really look for the opportunity to travel. Weird fears about flight issues or cruise ships going down in the ocean, or just irrational things. And I think, it prevented me from having some fun experiences and things like that. And then I don't know what happened, but at some point I just decided like experiencing life with my family was more important than my fears. And so, accepting, I guess, not resisting the idea of travel and those kind of things, and accepting. So again, like a lot more travel since then, a lot of great experiences with my wife and my kids and that kind of thing. So just a more basic example, I guess.
Yeah, and before I turn it over to you, Derek, I think hitting in that again is getting to the point where you can accept your own behaviors or accept your own flaws or things you need to work on, because we all have tendencies to just resist those and push them down. Once you accept them, and it may not be good, right? I'm not saying these things are good, but you got to accept them and move forward. And Derek, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I think you probably have quite a story of acceptance and moving forward and that type of thing. So I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah. Well, I had to blaze the trail of going through, as a teenager, a young teenager back in, I was 10, 11 years old, going through abuse. And, that was subjected on me by someone that went to church with our family, someone that, was in the community, and won't get into all the details, but that left a major wounding, a major trauma on the soul. And I spent years running from that. I spent years resisting that ever happened to me. It's the shame, the blame, the guilt that you feel because it happened. And, back in the mid 80s, that kind of thing was not, there wasn't all these mental health professionals. There wasn't all this counseling and mindfulness and stuff that was out, resources out there to support you. And so I blazed this trail for 30 plus years until brokenness, till it caught up with me, until you find yourself chasing the American dream, and you're running towards all these things that means so much to you at the time but really don't, and it leads you to, while you're hurting deep inside and you're projecting that energy of that hurt out on others in the world, and it impacts your relationships. Led to going through a divorce, led through many disconnects within friends and family. And so but I was brought to that spot of going through the divorce and that darkness of that, and then being faced with having to face that trauma, that wounding, and really stepping back into that. To in order for you to grow, you have to go. You have to go back to what it is that once hurt you, and you have to start working through that in a different way. You have to start using new tools, new strategies, new disciplines to lead you to a new path of growth through that situation. This last week I've been faced with something that I'm still angry about right now today. The fact that my first grade teacher, she taught elementary, middle school for 43 plus years. I found out she's 78 years old, just a beautiful spirit of a lady. I found out she has pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And I've just had this whole week of finding that out. And I went and saw her last weekend, and just spending time with her. I've had a hard time coming to accept that. Like, why is this happening to this beautiful soul, this beautiful woman that's invested 43 years of her life teaching kids and being there, optimistic? And then even just to hear her in our meeting, just how positive and optimistic she was through her faith, and that she was at peace with it, and she made the decision to not go through treatment, and she's okay with what is. I'm like, wow, that's such a beautiful message to all of us of how you surrender and come to acceptance of what you're faced with in the moment. But I haven't been able to come there yet in suffering with for her, in my own spirit. So, it's a journey, right? So it's not perfect. Like whatever we're going through today is a new challenge and something we're going to have to go to the journey of looking at and processing and using the tools that we know to help us move beyond it.
Yep. No, thank you for sharing that, Derek. And very powerful. And I'm going to triangulate a couple of things here. There's some key points coming out from all of us. And one of the things, again, I know I sound like a broken record, that I have a tendency to do, I've gotten better, as I've broken habits and grown as a person, is struggling with accepting the past, right? I'm the type of person that will try to negotiate with the past, and think about it. Well, if I would have done this, or that person would have done this, or even avoid thinking about it, right? But one of the things that has really helped me to move forward is accepting the past, accepting the present reality as is. I'm not saying that things are good or that people were in the right or whatever, but it happened. You've got to accept what happened. And also tagging on to that is the acceptance that it could not have turned out any differently, right? We were all doing the best we could with what we had and where we were at the time, and we can't change the past, and it could not have turned out any differently. So kind of bundling that together. And then accepting and moving forward with value-driven goals. For example, if you're down or you've got issues or you've got anxiety, like we all have, is really distilling down to your core values and taking decisive action based upon that. For me, that is so liberating when I'm able to say, I accept that this happened. I shouldn't have done that, or this person shouldn't have done that, but I can't change that. And taking decisive action based upon that. Another key thing that's really helped me is, and this comes from, the study of Stoicism we've talked about a little bit before, is reevaluating the meaning that I assign to events in the past. Whereas I may have assumed that that person was intentionally coming for me, or intentionally trying to hurt me, or intentionally trying to embarrass me. And in reality, they probably weren't. They were doing what they maybe thought was best. I'm not justifying it, but I don't over-index on that. I don't control others' actions. None of us control their actions. I can only control what's in my sphere of influence. So those are a couple of things that have really, really helped me. And the other thing, and I found this formula, I can't take any credit for it, but struggle equals circumstance times resistance, right? And I think we can apply that to everything we've talked about today, because in that formula, struggle equals circumstance times resistance. There's only one variable that you can control. You can't control the circumstance all the time, right? It's beyond your control, but you can control your acceptance and your lack of resistance, right? Those are things that you can do. So again, I know there was a kind of a rush of items there, but I think some of those things, based upon our discussion today, really were triangulating in my head about how to approach those things, and to provide some practical advice for folks listening in about these are things that everybody struggles with, and these are really practical examples or practical guidance from people. The three of us who've dealt with this, we all got a few years behind us at this point, have dealt with this over many years, and for the most part, we've all stumbled, have come up pretty well on the other side. So I'm going to pause there.
Yeah, I'll jump in for a second, because I think for me on my journey towards acceptance, or even getting to the point that I could start to do the acceptance, it's really been this, I'll offer, like it's been recognizing my pattern of behavior, or recognizing I'm behaving or I'm doing certain things, and realizing that. So I go back to resistance, and I offer this again around helping others who might be listening how to recognize maybe you're doing that resistance thing, so that you can start to move towards acceptance. And so talked a little bit earlier about, you might be avoiding stressful situations and those kinds of things. I think that's one thing to be looking for. I think another one is the fear thing that I touched on in my example is, you might be introducing irrational fears, or other things might be how you're resisting. And then another one, when I thought about it, is distraction. So you might be distracting yourself, so that you're not even thinking about the thing that you're avoiding or stressing out about. And just being able to recognize, like through meditation or other ways, just kind of observing yourself and realizing, hey, I'm distracting myself with YouTube or TikTok or something, or I'm distracting myself with alcohol or whatever, right? And so again, you kind of have to think about, how are you resisting that thing that's not really going to go away until you recognize it and accept it, and start to deal with whatever that thing is, to get towards that, what did you say, that transform, accept to transform, right? It's just an additional comment there.
All great points, Derek.
Well, I think there's a variety of ways of looking at this from the perspective of how do you move yourself forward. And all great points has been mentioned here, but one thing I would also say that is very valuable is grabbing you a sheet of paper and either drawing a picture of whatever is there for you in the moment, or writing words on a page of how you're feeling or what's going on in your life. Just start writing, or start, that's a form of meditation. Is drawing or writing is a form of meditation, or speaking. You can start an audio on your phone or whatever, and just speak what's going on from your heart, in your own private moment. And I think that what you do there is you take a step back and you start getting your feelings out on the page, and you just start. It's like a starting point. So you start becoming aware of what's going on inside yourself, so that you can start that journey of processing it. That will, you start, and in that writing you start, deciding what it is that you want to be different here. How do you want to move forward? And you start answering some of those basic questions of what it is that you want here. And I think that starts the process of just becoming aware, so that you can step out and to lead yourself to awareness. I think awareness equals acceptance at some point down the road, because most people never become aware, so therefore they never go down the path of trying to come into acceptance of something that's happened to them. So that's what I would encourage: is find what works for you. Whether it's meditation, breathing, even working out, going on a walk in nature, writing words on a page, drawing pictures, talking to a close friend about what could be happening, that you would trust, and that has gone through some stuff and maybe grown through some things. Talk to people. It's community, it's support. So that's what I would encourage, is some things that you can do to start on this journey.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. You guys hit some really good points there, and I think You both said in different words, hyper awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be aware of what's happening. And to your point, Doug, to get to awareness, meditation and mindfulness come into play, right? Being in the present moment, observing your thoughts, right? Because you can only change habits when you become aware of them, when you bring them from the unconscious or the subconscious to the conscious and change the reward system. Then, I'll put a link below about some really scholarly articles that I've been looking at recently that describes the science behind this, but bringing things into the consciousness and you can break a habit. So, and one more point, Doug, and you you talked about the YouTube stuff. I do have a tendency as well, like if to avoid what I need to deal with by watching YouTube videos. And so I've really had to bring that into focus, become very aware that, yeah, dude, you can't sit on the couch and watch YouTube videos for 4 hours. You've got to deal with this issue, right? And also, my procrastination is another coping mechanism or skill that this has helped me to overcome. Face things head on, take action, because when you procrastinate, or I think you use the word avoid, which is very similar, it just gets worse, right? So when you're going through the mud, you keep going. So cool. All right, and I think we're coming up close on time here, so I'm going to see if there's any parting thoughts or last thoughts, any words to wisdom. I think we've hit the nail on the head here today, but let's go around the room.
It is okay to spend time watching this YouTube video or this podcast.
Good point.
That's my contribution.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I think awareness is transformation. Acceptance is transformation. If you're wanting transformation in your life, start that journey today, and it's never too late to start. You are in control of the future by making the decision today to start where you are.
Well said. Personal transformation is possible. Transformation is possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And there's a really good quote, Derek, about something about today and the future that escapes me right now. It would have been very eloquent, but it's gone. So cool. All right, folks. I think we've got another edition. I'm going to wrap up here. So thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll be back soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.